Years ago, when I was preaching, a couple visited from out of town, and at the back door, I met them, and they said they're in town to visit the husband's father, who was celebrating his 90th birthday, and his father and mother lived in a nursing home. When they told me their names, I said, "Oh, I go see them quite often, like once a month or every other month. I go by there and I spend an hour or so with them, and they're just lovely people. They're wonderful people. They have a great sense of humor." And he appreciated that, right? And I thought that was really neat. The next day in my office, I get a phone call from the visitor's wife. John and Betty, his wife, were in their 60s and visiting John's father and mother, who are in the nursing home. And Betty called me and said, "David, when we're visiting my father-in-law at the hospital yesterday, my husband, John, had a massive heart attack, and he's in the hospital here in town. And I'm just asking you to pray for him because it's massive. He might not make it." I immediately went up to the hospital and I entered the room to visit them because they had nobody there in town. They didn't know anybody. And I walked in and I saw the husband, John. He had the tubes all in his veins, in his nose, the oxygen. He was awake, but he couldn't talk. And she told me what had happened. And she asked her husband, "Can I tell David what happened yesterday?" And he nodded. And she told me this story. She said, "We're visiting his father and his mother in the nursing home. The father's laying down. He hadn't been he's been bedridden for a couple of years. He couldn't get out of bed without help. The father's sitting on the edge of the bed with his father, and they're talking, and all of a sudden the son grabs his heart and he collapses into his father's arms. Massive heart attack, and the father's holding his son, and John's wife Betty is right there watching it, and so is his mother watching this. And the father's holding his son. The 90-year-old father is crying out to his son, "John, son, please don't die. I love you, son. I love you, son. Please don't die. Please don't die." And they called the paramedics, and they called and they come in. They rush into the hospital in which he was in now. And when the mother told me the story, the wife told me the story. I said, "Oh, what a story!" And she said, "David, that's not the end of the story. That was the first time in my husband's life he ever heard his father say the words to him, 'I love you.'" First time. 90-year-old father, 65-year-old son. For 65 years, the son had longed to hear the words from his father, "I love you." I know some of you probably can relate to that story. If I don't know if I don't know my mom and dad love me, if I doubt it, how can I love anybody? I must be unlovable if the two people who should love me, above all else, if I think they don't love me. We long to be loved by our fathers and our mothers. And I know some of you don't get that, haven't got that. I know some of you have got. But as she told me the story and told me that's the first time her husband had ever heard the words, I looked over at John, in bed with all the tubes and all that, and tears were streaming down his face. He was finally dismissed from the hospital, and 3 months later, I got an email from Betty that her husband had died. But he died happy. He had the Lord, and he also knew his daddy loved him. Both daddies. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know why we're so hesitant to tell people we love them or to speak an encouraging word to somebody. Whatever you're going through, whatever loss you're experiencing it, I just want you to know something. You can lift yourself up a little bit higher today with a little bit more hope by thinking of somebody that needs your words of encouragement. They need a phone call, or they need a text, or they need an email. And maybe they didn't know somebody cares about them. So my encouragement to you today, as you work through your grief, that one of the greatest things you can do today, and you can take 1 minute, contact somebody who needs an encouraging word. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to say much. You can just say, "Thanks for being my friend. And I just want to tell you I love you." At Spark of Life, we believe in hope, and we see at every single one of our retreats and workshops, people who speak words of life to other people who help their own grief walk when for a while, for just a moment, they think of somebody else and their problems. So today, give yourself permission to grieve if you're in grief, but also give yourself permission to encourage somebody else to live forward with your grief. And one of the neatest ways to do that is to think of another person, and before it's too late, say those words, I love you. That's our encouragement for the day from Spark of Life. If you need further help in your grief walk, go to our website, see what we offer. We believe in hope because we've seen it thousands of times return to people. At Spark of Life, there's always hope.